All you're asking for from your child or teen is peace. You are tired of the constant nagging, of asking for one thing so many times. You feel that you've tried so many different ways, or one way so many times, and you wonder why they just can't get it. I mean, it seems so simple. You feel that this is actually just going to wear you down. Hi, my name is Fiona. Welcome to the space in which we work through the building blocks of what can make your child's school journey more successful, while giving both you and the child peace of mind, especially in situations in which you're working with a limited support system. Today, we are going to work through 3 common mistakes that parents make when disciplining their children. So the first mistake that we make in disciplining our children is around how much we demand of or expect from the child versus how we respond to the child's needs and preferences. So as we discipline our children, we are likely to struggle if our expectations from our child or children are above their skill level or their level of competence. And we are also, on the other side, quite likely to struggle if we place too much emphasis or place emphasis solely on the preferences of the child. So an example of where the expectations may be out of balance when disciplining a child would be back in the day when children used to be beaten by the stroke of the cane because of getting low marks. They would receive these beatings without it being found out why the child is performing poorly. Now, these days we may not be beating with the stroke of the cane, but sometimes we leave the children feeling internally beaten by the things that we say, without finding out why they're behaving in the way they are. And this may not be strictly about studies, academics, but in any situation where we ask the child to do something, we have expectations of the child, but we don't find out whether they are actually equipped to do what it is that we want them to do. And when we do things this way, we find that they come up with workarounds to be able to do what we want, or to give the impression that they have done what it is that we want them to do. So in the example of marks, they may resort to copying their friends' homework so that they can please you. So it's always better to first make sure that the child is equipped physically and emotionally to do what it is that you want of them, and then after that make the demand or have the expectation of the child. On the other side, an example of only placing emphasis on the child's preferences would be in situations where we provide them or we give them each and every wish and whim. We do not make age-appropriate demands of the child, and whenever they do not get what they want, they begin to whine, they have tantrums, and because we are looking for peace, we bend to what it is that they're asking us for. So the balance lies in having age-appropriate expectations of them for which you can hold them accountable, but only after making sure that they are fully equipped physically, emotionally, and all relevant ways to meet the expectations that you have of them. The 3 tips that I provided in this video here provide an excellent start point for us to begin supporting our child emotionally so that they can be able to meet age-appropriate expectations that we have of them. So the second mistake, after age-appropriate expectations are in place and we are supporting our children to meet these expectations, the second mistake that we make is not allowing the child to experience the consequences of his or her poor decisions. Sometimes we do not want the child to suffer or go through inconvenience or any form of discomfort. But the challenge with this, the difficulty with this is that we rob the child of the opportunity to start developing their discipline muscle themselves. And this can be a bit difficult, especially when we are trying to bring the children up to be able and capable adults. So an example of how a mom used consequences to help her children to make more favorable choices for themselves would be this mom who had a bit of a struggle at bedtime. So whenever it was bedtime, they had agreed that the bedtime would be at 9 p.m. with the children. However, every time 9 p.m. rolled around, the children were either feeling slightly hungry or thirsty, they needed to go to the bathroom, they just needed to tell their sibling one more thing, or they were looking for one of their socks for the next day. And each day it was a different reason, a different excuse. So this mom got very exhausted of this because she herself also needed to prepare for her end of day and be up ready and early to get the kids ready to go to school the next day. So what she ended up agreeing with them was that if they had a choice basically, and if they were not ready or in bed by 9 p.m., she would not allow them to attend their extracurricular activities the next day after school. So they had extracurricular activities after school, which they thoroughly enjoyed and could not imagine missing. So they agreed on this plan of action where they would miss these extracurricular activities, sport, drama, games, that sort of thing. So they agreed to fall asleep at 9 p.m. And, they kept with that for about 3 days. And then on the third day, this started happening again. So the very next day after the third day, when it was time to pick the children, immediately after the classes had finished, the mom came and collected the children. And they were so upset. They didn't expect her to be able to come, but she made it. She collected them and took them back home. This upset them, but they learned their lesson. So this marked the end of the bedtime struggle, because when 9 p.m. came around that evening, the children were both in bed. It was quiet. The lights had all been switched off. No further effort was required by the mom. And this just went on. They didn't stop that. It is also very important that the discussion about the consequence that you have with the child is done beforehand, such that if for no meaningful reason the boundary is crossed, then you can be able to implement the consequence. It is also best that we implement the consequences consistently, because not doing so on a consistent basis sends the message that, as in the previous example, sends the message that it is okay to delay on some days. And then it becomes very difficult for the child to know when they need to take you seriously and when not to. The third mistake that we as parents make when disciplining our children is forgetting, or maybe not realizing, that we need to model the discipline that we expect from our children. An example of how modeling discipline can work or not would be this case of a mom who found that her children, and herself as well, needed to be very careful about their sugar intake. So they needed to exercise a high level of discipline around sugar. So what she asked the children to do was to make sure that whatever they take, they should have only 1 spoon of sugar in it. And they all went along with that, and that included her herself. However, on the side, this mom struggled with a sweet tooth. And so she would quietly put the 1 spoon of sugar in, say, her tea, and add a small amount of sugar along the side of the spoon and add that to her tea. So they continued, and everything went on well, or at least so she thought, until one day she found her daughter putting the 1 spoon of sugar plus a bit of sugar along the side of the spoon and added that to her tea. The mom was very upset about this, and she had an immediate reflex reaction to the child. And she was just about, of anger that is, and she was just about to give her a piece of her mind when it dawned on her that this child must have seen me adding more sugar than we had all agreed to my tea. So it's good for us to realize that when we as parents fail to walk our talk, our authority in the area in which we are needing a particular sort of discipline from our child is eroded. Our credibility, our believability becomes so much less. Having said that, we need to keep in mind that we are growing. As people, we are growing. As parents, we are growing. It's not just our children who are growing, actually. As our children are growing, we too are growing. Remember that when your child was just born, the level of, can I say, maturity that you are at is not the same level that you are at now. And that's because you have grown. As the child has grown, you have also grown. So it's important to know that we can actually grow. We can get better. We can hold ourselves. We can also become more disciplined. We can also become better models. It's not outside of our ability. We just need to keep on working on ourselves, and we will be able to get there. If you have found this video helpful, please like it and share it with anyone else who you think may find it useful.